All right, welcome to Pack Talk Podcast, episode 73. Today we're talking about a topic where we've gotten quite a few questions about recently, which is about introducing two dogs, right, or introducing multiple dogs together. So there are a lot of variables that go into this scenario. There's a lot of different ways this can happen. So what we're going to do today is talk about ideal conditions, and then we're going to go into some alternative conditions that you might be experiencing to hopefully cover a good basis of situations that people trying to have two dogs be introduced properly go through and give them some good protocols and things to follow along that regard. Okay, so without further ado, the ideal scenario number one is we have two dogs that belong to two different people. So let's say Chris, he's hanging out, Lexi's his friend. Are you guys just work teammates, or are you friends?
We're friends.
Okay.
We're good friends.
Kevin? Friends with Chris?
I'm friends with everybody at the table.
Okay.
Boys.
All right.
Good to go.
Just asking. So
Maybe
let's
Ben,
say,
I don't know, though. I don't.
Ben, you're a little suspect. So let's say, you have a dog, your friend has a dog, and you guys are wanting to hang out together with your dogs. So a good process to go through with this, and there's different ways you can do this, but ideally what I like to see is that first we get our two dogs in vicinity and we take a walk together, right? That could be, one person taking their dog over to the other person's neighborhood, not going into their house, but just going to their neighborhood, or meeting at a neutral location like a park. Start taking a walk together, not allowing the dogs to actually make physical contact, but the dogs can smell each other, they can see each other, they can observe each other, right? And there are a lot of dogs that get super hyperactive when they start seeing other dogs, because they're getting excited. Maybe they're anticipating a interaction. Maybe they're used to just interacting with any and every dog. Or maybe there's dogs that don't like other dogs just coming up to their face, right? So you have different personalities, different characteristics with the dogs. So this process of just walking together, not making contact, kind of gets the two dogs used to each other. Let's say one might be just overly excited to greet other dogs, and the other one doesn't really care about other dogs being up in their face. So this kind of brings them both onto the same level. They're getting to know each other without making contact. They're getting to get their energy in sync, right? We don't want, hyperactive energy meeting like a calm energy out of nowhere. You know what I'm saying? Ideally, the dogs are calm, confident, relaxed. So we take them on a walk. And if your dog's trained, I would walk them in heel position, right, which is on your left side, loose leash. If they're not trained, you can just walk them like you normally do, but just not allowing them to have contact. Now, let's say you're walking, and at some point you're getting a good vibe, right? So this is going to be a good judgment call based on the owners, right? The owners are going to have to make a good judgment call. But let's say one of the owners or both the owners is getting a good vibe. I think my dog's comfortable. Then in that case, what I would do is I would shift the positioning to where there's one dog and owner up front, one dog and owner behind. So we're kind of like in a single file situation right now. We're continuing to walk. Okay, if the dogs seem comfortable with that, I would swap positions or turn around so that the dog that was in front is now behind the other dog. We're walking just like that. So we're getting the dogs used to different perspectives of each other, different perspectives of how they're going to act as they change positions in relation to each other. And then if everything is still going along fine, I would eventually have the dog that's in the rear get close enough to the dog up front so the dog in the rear can sniff the dog in the front, right? Sniff the dog's genital region, the front dog's genital region, okay? Because that's how dogs meet, right?
Right.
If you're going to meet someone, you give them a handshake or a hug, right? That's respectful from a human perspective. From a dog perspective, smelling each other's genitals is how they meet, right?
Wait, so we aren't supposed to do that?
You're not supposed
as a human?
Yeah, you're not supposed
I meant to tell you.
Copy that. Sorry, Kevin.
So we have the dog up front, the dog behind comes up, smells them. Then we turn around, we basically swap positions. So now the dog that was behind is up front. The dog that was in the front is now behind and can smell the other dog. If everything seems good there, then we can allow the dogs to have that physical interaction. And if everything seems good there, then we could take them to like a park to play or one of the backyards to play, right? And basically at that point, you're just carefully monitoring them. And if one gets uncomfortable, then you could stop that, go back to some walking, stuff like that, okay? But let's say you're letting the dogs like sniff each other and one whips around and you can tell they just don't like the other dog smelling them. In that case, I would not let them do the full physical interaction. I would just continue to take walks. You could do several sessions of walking together in the sniffing thing to get them more and more used to each other. And over time, if you maintain the same routine and ritual and they're respectful, then they should eventually get along, right? But the whole premise with that is don't rush it. Take your time, right? You're on the dog's time. Let them get used to each other, right? So anyway, that would be an ideal situation where the dogs do get along. But do you guys have anything to add to that? 2 dogs owned by different people, maybe they're friends, trying to introduce them to see, can they get along? Can they play together? Can they hang out together?
I mean, I would just go for, I mean, this would apply to all of these scenarios probably that we're about to talk about, but like educate yourself a little bit on not only just general dog body language, but get to know your own dog on that level as well. Because like if you don't understand what your dog is displaying, you could be pushing them into something that they're not. Like there are obvious things like you're talking about. Dog whips around. They're like, oh, obviously they don't like that. But there's also other subtle things like your dog getting rigid or tail positioning, ear positioning, those things like that. So kind of study up on that. And we've done.
You got any examples?
Yes, like let's say the dogs are meeting. The one that's sniffing the genitals, the one that's or the one that's getting its genitals sniffed. Gets super rigid, right? Tail maybe tucks or lowers, ears are back, their heads hunched down, right? This is signs of insecurity, so signs of maybe there's some fear going on. Doesn't mean that they can't eventually interact, but right there, like you may not want to push it much further than that because now we're kind of putting that dog in a corner and it's going to put them in a bad situation where they may feel they need to display some aggression or run or whatever. Like you're just not going to put it in not putting that dog in a good situation. So educating yourself a little bit on just overall dog body language is going to help set you up because you can make the call. Again, people feel pressure like, hey, do this X, Y, and Z, and we're going to get our dog to interact. Like you feel pressured to keep pushing. Hey, let's make it work. Like you also got to know, all right, this ain't going to work right now. We need to back off and take some steps back.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on those?
No, I mean, while doing this, of course, just minimize risk as much as possible. Even if you get to the point to where they're free roaming in the yard or something like that, just still have like a leash in place, so that you can get in and separate if need be without getting a redirection to yourself or making a scenario worse than what it needs to be.
Yeah.
But, even at the core, like bare bones of, training, doing some engagement. If you can get some engagement going just with that other dog being in the environment, that could help get comfort levels to where they need to be to where the dogs can safely interact as well.
Yeah. And I would just say that brings up a good point in my head is small disagreements. So let's say that the 2 dogs are hanging out in the yard. If they have a small disagreement where they rough at each other or maybe nip at each other, don't freak out. It's okay. Now, if they're getting overboard where one just grabs a hold of the other one, starts thrashing them, obviously that's overboard. So in that case, I'd use the leash to get him away. Or if my dog's trained on a remote collar, I'd use that communication tool to help recall that dog back to me away from that disagreement. But small disagreements can be expected in most cases, and I legit wouldn't freak out about that. A lot of people, probably would be all worked up about it. And now if I get worked up, that's going to just intensify the dogs, so if they have a small disagreement, they can settle it themselves. Good to go. If you need to step in, you have to make that decision. So let's say same scenario. We've got 2 dogs belonging to different people and the dogs are not getting along. We've gone through the walking, we're going through the sniffing, and we're not comfortable. One of the dogs is turning on the other one's growling, reacting at the other dog, things like that. Or maybe the dog that's behind the first dog getting to sniff the genitals jumps on that dog and starts humping it or something like that. So that's a sign of dominance. So if these things are happening, the dogs are not getting along, we're not getting comfortable letting our dogs kind of just hang out together in the yard or play together or anything like that, then it doesn't mean that I can't hang out with my friend with my dog. It just means there has to be some kind of rules in place or boundaries in place. Maybe if we're hanging out together, the dogs are in a downstay instead of free roaming. Maybe they're in a spot or a place command instead of free roaming. You know what I'm saying? So you're going to have to take that in stride And if your dogs don't get along, I don't think that it's a showstopper for you and your friend or your family to be hanging out with your dogs, but there definitely needs to be some boundaries in place to just make sure that everyone remains comfortable, because you might have a dog that's not comfortable with other dogs, but you still want it to be around your family and friends and all that, you know? Or if you have family and friends coming over and your dog's the one that's uncomfortable, maybe you just put it in a kennel while they're over so that your friend's dog can be hanging out with you. You know, so those are some things that you could consider, boundaries to put in place if your dogs don't get along, even though you've been through the dog walking and sniffing each other combination. You could also continue to take walks together to try and just get the dogs more and more used to each other's presence and their personalities, right? So that's what I would recommend for two dogs that are not getting along. But anybody have anything to add to that or other thoughts along those lines?
I think just have realistic expectations, and at the end of the day, it's going to come down to the dedication of the owners. You know what I mean? Like you have to ask yourself at a certain point, how big of a deal is this for you?
Yeah.
You know, if me and Chad are going to hang out as a family, it's like sometimes, like if our dogs don't get along, I might just leave my dog at home, right? Mm-hmm. Or you might leave your dog at home when you're coming over here. If it's like a big deal for us, hey, I want our dogs to be able to tolerate each other.
Yeah.
Then that's something the two of us are going to have to, on a dedicated level, work on consistently. Right?
Yeah. All right, good to go. So next scenario is going to be we have a family. We have a second dog coming to live in the home with an already established dog in the house, right? So the first scenario was two different people. They live two different places. They're just wanting to hang out. Now we have a family. We're bringing a second dog into the family where we already have a dog. So guess what? Basically, the protocol is going to be exactly the same. When you first bring that second dog over, you know, and a lot of people want to do play dates or meeting dates or meet and greets and all that. You got to be really careful, because in a typical meet and greet, what people are doing is they just bring their old dog over to wherever the new dog is, and they just let them go into a yard, and it could be chaos. They could get along. It's hard to tell, you know, but if they don't get along, the people will generally just give up on the second dog and not end up adopting it or getting it or whatever, you know.
Also, if they do get along, it's not a
it's
not an indicator that it's going to work out for you.
Exactly. So with that being said, what I would do, first of all, again, ideally take them to like a neutral place, not at your home. But you bring that second dog and your first dog to a neutral place. It could be in your neighborhood, could be at a park, something like that, and just take them on a walk together the same way we did before, where they can observe each other, they can sniff each other, right? Kind of get their energy on the same level. If all that's going smooth, again, they're not making physical contact. But if all that's going smooth, you could then do the genital sniffing scenario where you're rotating them through who's sniffing who. Then if everything seems smooth there, then you could proceed and take them to like a fenced-in yard or something like that and let them hang out, closely monitoring them, right? Just like we talked about before. Now, let's say you're doing this, and first of all, the reason why you do this in a neutral area is because your already established dog probably associates your home to like its territory, right? Or family territory. So you don't just want to bring in a second dog hot into your dog's established territory and let your second dog start breaking boundaries and just disrespecting your first dog, right? We don't want that to happen. So that's why we still follow this process. But also with the dog already established in the house, it has its routines. It has kind of its system of doing things. So in that second dog, we go through the walking scenario. If everything seems cool, whenever I bring that second dog into the house, generally I'd recommend just putting it into a kennel when you first get it home, right? Because we also want to start good expectations for that second dog. We don't want it to think that they can just free roam and just, you know, dominate and just have control of everything. We bring it in, we put it into a kennel, we kind of show it around. We show it, you know, that this kennel is its resting spot, its safe place. No one's going to mess with you there. Just getting it used to the sights and smells of the house. If it's two people living there or two people with kids or one person with kids, like you guys have your own things going on throughout the day. So you want this dog to be able to just observe and get used to whatever's going on in the house, right? And then several times a day, you know, I would again take the two dogs out on a walk together to just continue their mutual understanding of each other. And this is with the assumption that they're getting along, you know what I'm saying? And then at a certain point, probably a couple days into this, you could allow your new or second dog to start free roaming around the house, ideally keeping a leash on it, because now that it's free roaming around, there might be some disagreements between the dogs. Maybe they can resolve them themselves. Maybe they can't. So you might have to intervene and use that leash to your advantage. You know what I'm saying? So those are some of the basic recommendations and protocols for that scenario with two dogs coming to live in the same home and they get along. So does anybody have any recommendations or other thoughts on that?
Yeah, actually, I just went through this. I had my girlfriend move in. She brought her two dogs and her cat. So this is why training is so important. I can rely on my training, and I still rely on my management. She's been with me for about 3 weeks, 4 weeks, going on a month now, whatever. If we both leave the house, they're still managed. Everybody's in a separate area, sectioned off, so that way nothing happens while we're not there. So the management aspect is extremely important, but also having even the most basic bit of training to rely on to help work through that. Because even if they don't necessarily get along with the dog, well, now they can work together, right? Now they can build that bond, like you said, with the walking, with doing the spot time, things like that inside of the home to help change the dynamic and maybe the way that the old dog views the home, And we've had, no issues, little grumbles here and there. Again, the dogs will pretty much work it out, but I can send my dog to spot. Her dog, I'm almost done training, so he could go to spot too. And the other little beagle, he just wanders around. He's fine.
Yeah.
But having that as, your course of action is, to me, it's the best choice,
Yeah, good to go.
One thing that just popped in my head that could apply probably to all these scenarios in that initial meet, that initial meet and greet that you're doing, your dog's energy can be a factor as well. So if you have one of those dogs that are, like you mentioned, they just come with that insane energy, right? So that can throw some dogs off. Lexi and I did a YouTube video where we were doing this. I had a puppy, Jackson. He was like a little extra, right? And there was one of her dogs that was like, nope, don't want nothing to do with that, right? So like to help that go smoothly too, maybe that high energy dog, I work a little bit before that meet and greet, kind of level out some of that energy. That can make it more positive for a dog that doesn't respond well to that level of energy as well.
Yeah, good to go. All right, so that's some thoughts and considerations for two dogs coming to live in the same house and they get along. But now let's say you're doing the walks and the genital sniffing and the dogs are not getting along, right? You start to notice one of the dogs is not appreciating the other one being close to it, doesn't like its space encroached upon, those types of things, or uncomfortable, right? So depending on which dog that is, it might be a little bit different. But let's say the dog that's already established in the house is not 100% comfortable with the new dog. I would follow the same protocols as what we talked about before if they did get along, where the second dog is in the kennel, in the house, getting used to the house, getting used to the routine, getting used to the boundaries. I would also be teaching this dog about the boundaries of the house, not to mess with the first dog, right? So that means if I'm walking the second dog around the house, I'll have it on a leash and reward it for, doing good things, reward it for doing behaviors that we like giving the first dog space, not encroaching upon the first dog, those types of things. And then, again, I would just continue the walks, and over time, you should start to see them getting more comfortable with each other. The first dog might not ever be 100% comfortable with the second one, but you do your best to make them two sync up. And once the second one, the new one, understands not to mess with the first dog in the house, to respect certain boundaries and things like that, then they can both free roam together. Then, of course, you would want to monitor them. You know what I'm saying? But let's say that the second dog, the new dog, is the one that does not appreciate the first dog, and the first dog is the one constantly pushing a boundary with the second one. What I would do at that point is, like, once we're doing our walks and the second dog is coming to live with us, I would have the first dog and second dog do some kennel time next to each other together. And that's, again, the whole purpose of that is just getting them both used to seeing each other, both used to being around each other, right? So we kind of make that normal. We kind of habituate them to each other. You know what I'm saying? Continue our walks together, continue our boundary establishment so they understand whose boundary is whose, what they each like. And over time, I would imagine in most cases that they're going to be fine, but there might be some extreme cases where that one dog might just have to be taught some additional boundaries not to mess with the second dog, right? And again, you could build a training progression for that. You could use your leash to help you with that, rewarding them when they're doing the right thing, rewarding them for maintaining boundaries, stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? So those are kind of like some scenarios that I've seen, things that come to my head in that second dog coming to live with the first dog already in the house. But do you guys have any other thoughts or anything on that one?
I mean, I went through this with my dog Vader and Leia. I had Vader for a couple of years. I was bringing Leia in, and he immediately was going to take her out, pin her down to the ground, super aggressive, right? I don't think I was training at that point, so I don't think that there was any expectations really, right, other than the ones they made for themselves. But in that case, like, we're doing a lot of this stuff. We did, like, I think to have the realistic expectations of toleration over interaction, right? So like first I want to get, like, you just got to tolerate each other. So you do a lot of those things, proximity in the kennel. You know, my wife Kelly would walk Leia, I'd walk Vader. They're just walking, right? Experiences build trust, right? So putting them through things together where they're working for you together, that's going to build trust amongst them as well, increase their bond. And then feeding them, you know, at the same time in proximity in the kennel. A lot of just, I take one out on the leash, they do their business, go back in the kennel, take the other one. A lot of the management stuff that we're talking about, but just over time, they got to know each other, and they're like, there's no need to get aggressive here, and it kind of worked out for us. So, again, don't rush things. Focus on the goal of toleration over the interaction first, and then the interaction may or may not come.
Yeah. Take it in stride. All right, now we have an alternative scenario. We have two dogs that are already living in the same house, but they have a strong history of fighting, and the fighting gets pretty bad, right? It's not just a little disagreement. It's a very severe level of fighting. So in this case, what we're going to do, because these dogs are already living in the house, they're already establishing a history of fighting, so they have a habit of fighting. There's probably certain things that trigger them. So we're basically going to just, I want to say turn their world upside down, but basically just start new. You know, hit the reset button. We're going to act like these two dogs are brand new to the house. So we're going to start them off with kennel protocols where they're both in the kennel at the same time. Again, getting that habituation together, learning to tolerate each other. They're going to be walking together without making physical contact. Ideally, if you're one person by yourself and you don't have someone else to walk your dog with you at the same time, then you take them out one at a time on a walk, right? So you can get that physical exercise in. But ideally, walking them both at the same time, not letting them make physical contact with each other. Again, just going through those experiences day in and day out, establishing new boundaries, establishing new rules and expectations. What I would recommend is take them through a training progression like we talked about in episode 28 and get them to the point where you can establish accountability with them. You teaching them expectations and then you teaching them accountability. And once you have that accountability in place, you start to allow more freedoms in the house. And once that's established, if they're starting to trigger and go back to old ways or old habits of starting fights, you use your accountability to stop that and then redirect them into a management tool like a spot command, a place command, a kennel, or a downstay, something like that. And basically what you're communicating to them is that if they can't manage their own time, right, because they're trying to get in fights, you will manage it for them. And that's what you're trying to establish in their mental state. You know what I'm saying? And over time, if you do that, you know, what I've seen in the past, the dogs will, for the most part, be good to go with each other, not be triggered to fight with each other. But there are extreme outlier cases where, you know, it's just one of those deep-rooted factors that the dogs just are not able to operate together. And in that case, you're just going to have to continue with management, you know, using your spot command, using your kennels, right, to manage the dogs throughout your day. And maybe one day they'll be good to go together, but the priority is managing them, making that routine and ritual as consistent as possible while continuing to build up the best behaviors possible. You know what I'm saying? So that does happen sometimes. There are outliers, right? But do you guys have any other thoughts on that alternative scenario? Two dogs living in the same house with a history of fighting.
I mean, I think you have to look at, like, when we're talking about something like this, because this can be serious, so you have to look at, like, the root of the issue. And what I believe is, like, most of the time this is a hierarchy issue, right? And so, like, there's no clear, strong leadership present, right? So, like, that's where a training progression is going to be. Like, these other two scenarios, you could probably finagle without in-depth training. Something like this, I'm probably going to recommend getting in-depth training, going through a training progression, because that establishes you as the pack leader, which is going to minimize a lot of this stuff, right? And then even I think in those outlier cases, you do this long enough it will address it.
Right.
Because I mean, it's just like, how long is it going to take? That's the
Right.
thing. Like, if we're talking about a dog that's been doing this for 9-10 years, right? Think
Mm-hmm.
about how long that's going to take to break something like that. It's genetically rooted inside of them and whatnot.
Yeah.
But that is training and strong leadership is going to be the answer for it.
Yeah, I mean, in this case, the training gives you that leadership. It also gives you tools,
Right.
management tools, right? Ways to manage the dogs, ways to communicate with the dogs. The dog should be doing as much work as possible. You should be doing as little work as possible, right? The dog should be adjusting to you not adjusting to them. Now, with that being said, obviously you have to apply management techniques, which might be considered adjusting to them because you're trying to like build up this routine that's going to be good to go for them. But in the long term, they're actually adjusting to you because you're establishing rules within your pack, rules within your house. You know what I'm saying? The walk is the bonding process. The more walks, the better, but establishing that engagement, right, with each dog individually at a very high level over time, like Chris said, is going to change their chemistry of behavior, the way their brain operates, the way the chemicals in their brain work. And if you can adjust that over time, and we don't know how long it's going to take. It depends on the dog. But over time, you should see changes in behavior due to those factors, right? All right. Next scenario, we've got a family or a friend gathering for the holiday, whatever holiday, 4th of July.
What are holidays?
We don't have 4th of July, Christmas, New Year's, where people travel. They're going to visit with their family and friends. So we've got 2 or more dogs from different families attending. They're going to be around each other for 2 or more days, usually how long these gatherings last. They get a little crazy too, the gatherings. When families or friends get together, it gets a little wild.
Oh, it gets wild, man.
So we also don't know if the dogs are friendly because let's say, for example, I'm getting together with my family. Maybe they live across the country. Maybe they got a new dog within the last time I saw them. So we don't know about that new dog. We don't know. Maybe we both got new dogs. We don't know how they're going to be. So what do? Well, we're going to go back to our ideal scenario one, two dogs that belong to different individuals. Follow basically the same thing. So once we get to our family gathering place, let's say we're meeting up at like an Airbnb somewhere between where we live at, or maybe we're going to a family member's house. First of all, bring your training equipment that you need. You need your kennel, you need your spot. If you're doing that kind of stuff, obviously you need a leash. So bring like your normal training stuff. And whenever you get there, start establishing the walking patterns, right? So if you took like a 3-hour car ride, you probably should just take a walk anyway. Don't take your dog in hot and heavy into the place that you're going to visit, but take a walk. Get the dog at a nice balanced energy state. If your family or friends or with other dogs are arriving at the same time as you, take a walk together. Not letting the dogs have physical contact, right? Getting the dogs used to the sight, smell, and just energy of each other. And then over time, again, going back to what we were talking about before, when you get those good vibes, those good judgment calls, like, okay, I think my dog's good to go. Let's do the sniffing. You do the genital sniffing routine. And then after that, if everything's still good to go, you can let them start interacting together with supervision and management as needed. But if they're not getting along, again, use the kennel to help manage, and then continue walking and experiences together. Continue testing those genital sniffing routines to see if they're going to get to the point where they're comfortable with each other within the time frame that you guys are meeting up, right? So that protocol is going to be gold for like most scenarios with any dogs meeting, whether it be long-term in the same house, whether it be 2 friends that want to hang out more often with their dogs, whether it be just a family and friend gathering for a holiday, right? But that's kind of what I recommend. If you're not comfortable with the dogs interacting, just let your dog be managed in the kennel when you guys are kind of in like the family or the family areas or the friend general areas or like the house, and just make sure that during that holiday time you're giving your dogs what they need, which is that mental and physical exercise every single day, right? So I know that recently, I think it was recently, me and Ben's family, we had like a little get together, up at the lake that we went to, and we all brought our dogs from different situations, right? And what I did to make sure my dogs were balanced out, I'd wake up before everybody else, take my dogs on a nice long walk, right? And then by the time I got back from my walk, everybody's still sleeping. So then I was like training with my dogs some more. And by the time I was done with that, everybody's still sleeping, so I'd be like just hanging out with my dogs some more and just getting their energy nice and balanced out before everybody else starts getting up and moseying around with their dogs. You know what I'm saying? So my dogs are already energy brought down before everybody else's dogs are coming out, stuff like that. So again, if you need to do that kind of stuff, you can. But you guys got any thoughts on that or perspectives, considerations on that one?
I mean, I just went through this with several of my clients because we just got through the holidays. It's like what you're talking about is an ideal. It's a good scenario because you got family members that have dogs that are trained and everybody's on the same page. You can everybody is cooperating, we'll say, right? So like some of my clients, not everybody cooperates. So they're concerned. Hey, my dog's trained, but my family has this dog that's crazy. They have no boundaries. They don't do anything with this dog, right? So I'm concerned even putting my dog on spot that this dog's going to get up in the grill and stuff like that. And there's the added, like one of the thing that one of my clients had was like, look, I know my dog's good to go, but I'm just so stressed. I'm sitting here watching her on spot when I see my family once a year, and it's like in that case, you're doing this for a weekend. Bring your kennel, put your dog in the kennel, do like what you're talking about. Get up early, walk your dog, exercise your dog, train your dog, put him back in the kennel, and then go hang out with your family, right? It doesn't have to. We don't have to get the dogs to interact, especially if you are dealing with uncooperative family members, right? Or and don't be afraid to set your own boundaries too. If it's the family coming over to my house and my family's uncooperative, hey, these are the rules of the house. My dogs, this is their house, right? So bring your own kennel, right? You're going to have to manage your dog. If you can't manage your dog, don't bring your dog, board it or whatever, right? Or you can kind of accommodate them and just do the same thing. I put my dogs in the kennel, let their dog do whatever, and then, hey, can you put your dog up in this room while I let my dogs out real quick? You know what I'm saying? So you got to kind of just take your specific scenario for what it is and make the best call.
Yeah. Environmental control for sure. That's a big aspect in any scenario. We don't want to lose control of the environment. Like I know when I take my personal dog to my mom's house for the holidays, he's in a downstay next to me. They come up to pet him. I'm like, hey, no. Reinforcing those boundaries. If old cousin Murph gets a little too close, might have to separate him a little bit, put him up, whatever the case would be.
Help Murph. Maintain a boundary.
I've never seen a wiener dog try to hump a Great Dane. It was pretty funny. But he corrected that, and we were good to go. But yeah, so to me, it's just all environmental control. If you feel like you can't control the environment, if you feel like it's stressing you out, just like Chris said, give your dog what they need daily and put them in the kennel. The kennel's not a bad place. People view it as this terrible place. My dog's in doggy jail or whatever. Most of the time, your dog's going to be more comfortable in the kennel. It's more of a controlled scenario. You've worked him. He's just going to lay down, go to sleep, and do his thing. So no worries there.
Just always have your dog's best interest in mind.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And just remember, healthy separation is still in effect. So even if you do take your dogs with you to your family or friend gathering for the holiday, you don't want them with you 24/7. You do want healthy separation, which means that sometimes they need to be in the kennel in the room that you're staying in or wherever you're staying at while you're out with the family. So make sure you're incorporating that as well, as long as you're satisfying their daily instinctual needs of physical, mental exercise and stimulation. And there's so many combinations of mental, physical exercise you can do. That's a different discussion, but don't do the same thing every day. If you walk the same 20-minute walk every day, your dog's just going to get conditioned to that. So then you need to change it up. If you always play fetch with your dog every single day, they're going to get conditioned to that. So you got to change it up. If you always do the same training drill every day, that's good for like habits, but at a certain point, you're going to have to change it up. So you need to make things more challenging. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, all right, I think we talked about some good factors with that one. Last scenario, which has a couple of breakouts to it, meeting dogs in the neighborhood on a walk.
Oh boy!
So let's
Save
say
the best for last, huh?
So let's say you're out in your neighborhood, you got your dog walking with you. Your dog may be trained, which means they'll be on a nice loose leash next to you, or maybe they're not trained, they're walking out ahead of you or something like that. So, and then you have another dog walking by with their owner, they're on a leash too. And they start coming over to you. Oh, can my dog meet your dog? Right?
No.
So what would you do in that scenario? What would you recommend?
I mean, again, just have realistic expectations, but then look at the bigger picture. Like, this is just my philosophy. Like, I don't really do that a lot. Like, I don't really care. Like, I don't know. Like, if Kevin's a stranger in my neighborhood, never seen this guy, he's walking up, hey, can my dog meet your dog? Like, I don't really know him. I don't know his level of control over his dog. I'm not on a walk to just encounter people with other dogs, right? Like that's not the purpose of my walks personally. So like I'm working my dog, I'm working on our bond, I'm doing our walk. So most of the time I just say, hey, no, we're in training, no interactions, right? Now, like if me and Kevin are next door neighbors, right? And then that more falls into like these earlier scenarios that we talked about where it's like, hey, I want our dogs to get along and to meet and that kind of stuff. But if it's just like the random passerby guy or girl, right? Hey, can my dogs meet? I'm probably going to say no. But
Yeah.
again, I mean, there can be ways to make it happen, but just, again, look at body language, look at the overall control that the owner has over the dog.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just want to make sure, like, even if your dog's like social, which means in general they're good with other dogs, that other dog may not be. Yeah, they may come over and just start dominating your dog. So
And that owner may have no idea
they
what
may
their
have no
dog is.
idea, or they may not think that that's what their dog. They're just oh, they're just playing. You know, their dog's just humping your dog, you know, or biting your dog
Biting
or
and
something.
growling. No, they're just vocal.
Yeah. So again, if it's like someone that I don't know, you know, I probably am just going to say no. I'm going to say no. You know what I'm saying?
But that's hard for people to do.
I know. But you just have to like have your dog's best interest in mind.
Exactly.
And because if you start giving your dog bad experiences
Right.
where you're just letting other dogs come up to them all the time and just dominate them at a certain point, your dog might start reacting to that. Your dog might start reacting at other dogs or people to try and keep them away because they're tired of that type of interaction.
And it's degrading the trust that your dog has in
Degrading
you.
your trust with, or your dog's trust with you. But with that being said, you know, if Kevin's someone that lives in my neighborhood and then he asks me the first time that I see him, you know, hey, can I let my dog meet your dog? And I'm like, no. But I see him every day. We walk the same walking route, and we start to become acquainted with each other. Hey, neighbor, how's it going? You know, we keep walking and all that. Maybe at a certain point we start like, okay, let's start taking some walks together.
Sure.
You know, because maybe we do want our dogs to hang out. Maybe I want Kevin to come over for some burgers and cheeseburgers and Jocko's or something. You know what I'm saying?
I'm down. I'm in it. Just let me know when.
So, you know, that kind of scenario. So if we want to start, if we're like seeing each other every day and then we start like becoming acquaintances, you know, maybe at that point we're like, hey, let's just take a walk together. You know, hey, can so-and-so meet your dog? Well, let's walk together, see how they are. And we follow the same procedure. The dogs are getting used to the sight, smell, and energy of the other one. Maybe we let them sniff each other and the genitals at first, and then maybe other places, you know. And we go from there. And if the dogs are cool, they can hang out, no factor. And then when I see Kevin the next day, hey, can so-and-so come say hi? Sure, right? Because at that point now, I've already established that the dogs are like cool with each other for the most part. You know, like if it's the next day, the dogs might have what's called spontaneous recovery and might not like that interaction at first. So then you just take a short walk together or whatever, you know, but now you got you a walking buddy and you and your dog can walk with your new walking buddies, right? Yeah. Something like that. So definitely can do that, you know, with people that you become acquainted with. But if it's just random people, I'm definitely going to say no.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know, so that's one scenario in the neighborhood. The other scenario is you're walking in the neighborhood with your dog, you're enjoying a nice stroll, right? And all of a sudden you got some off-leash dog charging you, and this dog wants to come over to your dog. You know what I'm saying? So what are you going to do in that scenario?
This is a very frequent one that I get asked, not by every client, but generally by a lot of them, you know, because this is a problem in a lot of neighborhoods. So I always tell them there's a few different things, right? Again, you want to have environmental control, and obviously if we're like working a client's dog, where the safety is number one, right, of our client's dog,
or your own dog,
our own dog.
If you're someone that has a dog,
right,
you know, like the safety of your dog's important,
right?
You know?
So safety, environment, all of that's like playing a part here. So I've always been trying to deter them. You know, they do sell things that you can walk with. They're like subsonic. Kind of has a noise that comes out that we can't hear, but it can deter dogs. You can slack out your leash and, you know, have something to keep that dog away from your dog. You can keep trying to walk and see if that dog's really dedicated in interacting with the dog. So there's a lot of variables at play as to what you do. I mean, I've gotten in the mix before where I've just grabbed that dog, you know, whatever, and just waited. You know, the owner usually comes running around the corner or whatever the case may be. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of variables at play. But you just have to take into account safety, like we said, environmental control, and doing what's best for you and your dog. So if that dog is dedicated to coming at you, you're going to need to do something to get that dog away, you know.
Yeah, unfortunately, this seems to be a pretty common thing in a lot of neighborhoods today. And I was just taking a dog home yesterday. It's like a smaller doodle. And the lady was telling me that she has extreme anxiety about walking in the neighborhood because there's such a strong history of dogs busting out the backyard, grabbing a hold of little dogs. You know, there's been a case where she was walking with her friend in the neighborhood, and the friend's dog, they were walking their small dog. Massive dog came out of nowhere, attacked the small dog. They tried to lift the small dog in the air. This dog's chasing them to their house. You know, chaos, right? There's multiple dogs that have gotten major injuries in their neighborhood from big dogs breaking out of backyards or running out the front door because a kid opened the door. Parents didn't know. Dog comes hustling out, comes over, attacks a dog that's being walked. So these are the kind of things that are stressing people out day in and day out in neighborhoods. And it's happening. And it's like you're fighting the anxiety of, I don't feel comfortable walking my dog because I never know if there's going to be an attack or a dog that's a dog at large running around, you know, or can I just enjoy a simple walk? You know what I'm saying? So like you said, Kevin, the ultrasonic dog deterrent is like one option, but that doesn't work in all cases.
Right.
So what I recommended for this lady, if like she's comfortable with that, is legit get like a cattle prod and get like a 6-inch or a 12-inch cattle prod and carry it with you. Because if you have a massive, powerful dog coming at you, you need to be able to defend yourself.
Yeah.
You know, if this dog could cause damage to you, could cause damage to your dog. So that cattle prod could be a good way to keep it away from you. You know, you would just kind of cattle prod it, you know, get it to move away from you because the cattle prod is designed to move cows. So it should be enough to help a dog move away from you. You know what I'm saying? Keeping your dog safe, because the other thing you don't want to do is like freak out every time there's a big dog coming at you, because then you're just going to create anxiety in your dog and in you. But if you have a way of controlling the situation, like with the cattle prod, you could then be comfortable. Oh, here comes a dog. Gotcha. You know, dog's running away, and I'm just going about my business.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
And that dog will learn too. Learned experience right there.
So it might seem extreme, but are you going to like just keep building up your own anxiety and building up your dog's anxiety every time there's a dog around? Or are you just going to take control of the situation? And you don't have to get a cattle prod. You could kick the other dog. It's a dog. I know it's a dog, but it's coming at you in an aggressive way. You know, you do what you got to do, right? Because, I mean, there's dogs out there, and we've done videos recently on dog attacks, dogs attacking kids, trying to attack kids, dogs attacking other dogs. So you just got to be careful with all that stuff and be ready, be aware of what's going on around you, be ready to take action, you know? And in this case, we're talking about off-leash dogs coming up at you. And the lady I was talking to yesterday, they're always big dogs, powerful dogs that can cause major damage. And they've busted out of a backyard, they've hopped a fence, they've come out of a front door in a neighborhood that people don't even know. You know what I'm saying? And you got to be ready. It can cause major damage to you. Not every dog's a friendly dog. You know what I'm saying? And if that dog is practicing that over and over, it'll just get worse and worse. Whereas it might create an association with you. If you have your cattle prod and you're stopping it every time it's trying to come to you, it might just leave you the F alone. You know what I'm saying? You won't have to keep doing that. So just some factors in that regard. But you definitely got to be aware, be careful, and have your dog's best interest in mind. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I can tell you, because I went through this with Vader a lot when I lived in a neighborhood. Like my big concern was more often than not the other dog.
Right.
I'm like, dude, Vader will kill this dog.
Yeah.
Like, and I've seen so many dogs come up and they're showing playful body language, and they just don't. They just keep coming. Right?
Yeah.
So I'm like,
Yeah.
dude, my dog is going to kill your dog, right? So
Yeah.
like, there were 2 or 3 dogs that consistently in the neighborhood would just be out in the front yard off leash, and so
Yeah.
like I would go without Vader and approach those people. You know, hey, look, hey, I want to introduce myself. I'm your neighbor. Blah blah blah. This is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And it's like 2 of the 3 anytime they'd see me, they bring their dog over. They hold him on the porch. I pass by. They let him off. Right. So like I had no issues. Now one of them, I had multiple conversations with him, and he basically just blew me off. He had these 3 little Shih Tzus, right?
Yeah.
And they would come and keep charging, and I, at a certain point I did have to take action. I kicked one of those dogs and then didn't have an issue. Of course I don't like hurting a dog or kicking a dog, but I had to do it once. It was enough, and that dog left us alone.
Yeah.
Right. So like sometimes it's just having a conversation with your neighbor, because I think we get heated. You go on the Facebook page, oh, these people left their dog out again, and blah, blah. And then now you're just pissed off, and like you're getting into a neighbor war argument, right? Like they're gonna in spite leave their dog out, right?
Yeah.
It's like sometimes just break the barrier. Hey, nice introduction. This is what I'm doing. I'm doing some training. If you don't mind, please, just when you see me, Can you control your dog or whatnot? And then take it from there.
Those Facebook neighborhood pages get crazy.
They're intense.
They get
I mean,
real crazy.
things happen. You
Yeah,
know, it
sure.
could even have to. I mean, Zdato's jumped up and hit the handle of my storm door before.
Yeah.
And it opened up, but I was like right there. I was like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
But you know, those things can happen.
Sure.
You know, so it's like put yourself in their position too. Now, if you go and talk to them, like this lady with this dog that keeps getting out, she goes and talks to him. He's like, "Oh, whatever."
Right.
At that point, yeah, I'm going to cattle prod
Yeah.
your dog because I've tried everything. At that point, you know,
Yeah.
you don't care. All right, now I have to manage your dog
Yeah.
because you're refusing to.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've also built up my training progression so strong that there have been times where I'm like, Vader, down, stay. Boom, I go and grab this dog. Hey,
Yeah.
here's
Oh,
your
yeah,
dog.
I've done that before.
Right? And so now, boom, again, that's increasing the trust that your dog has in you.
Right.
And you're kind of embarrassing
Yeah.
the dog owner too. Because like, oh, shoot.
Yeah.
And you grab your dog, heel, and then you're out of there. You know what I'm saying?
I've definitely done that multiple times. But I've also had a scenario where I was walking like 4 dogs in a neighborhood, strolling along. All of a sudden, this old bulldog breaks out of like a house.
I know what bulldog you're talking about.
He breaks out he had like a history of like opening the front door and just waltzing out. So he starts following us, right? And I'm like, okay. And he like can't keep up with us, but he's following us for like a mile. And I was like, oh my God. So I put the 4 dogs I had, walked them back to my place, put them in a downstay, and then I got the bulldog. I like used one of their leashes and like hooked it on the bulldog and just walked him back to his house. And the guy that lived there was like, "Oh, I was looking for him. Didn't know where he went." And I'm like, oh my gosh, you know what I'm saying?
Let's say that bulldog's
your
probably
dog.
smoked.
I mean, but yeah, you bring up a good point about if you have a dog that could cause damage to another dog and the other dog's friendly and you can tell it's friendly walking up, you might have to keep it away for that dog's best interest. You know what I'm saying? But I'm comfortable with putting my dog in a downstay, dropping the leash, walking over to the other dog, getting it, taking it over to the owner. But if it's an aggressive dog, you know, a lot of people don't want to do that. So you got to kind of read the environment, read the scenario as to what's going on, and, you know, go from there. You know what I'm saying? But any other questions or scenarios on this topic of introducing 2 dogs?
I think, and I've had this conversation with a lot of people too, so I know we've harped on keeping your dog's best interests in mind. Maybe your dog just flat out doesn't want to interact with other dogs regardless of how much you want them to.
Yeah.
You know, I've had that conversation with many clients because they're like, they have to be good around dogs. They have to interact with dogs. It's like, why? They don't want that. You have to respect what they want to an extent. Now, should they be able to work and cope in the environment with dogs? Yes. But forcing interactions is never going to be the right thing.
Yeah.
And a lot of people get caught up in that. Like, my dog has to be social. We have to go to the beach. He has to play with other dogs. Why?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Let's just make sure that he's, you know, again, environmental control. We're looking out for his best interests and making sure that, you know, he trusts us, you know? So just something to consider for anybody listening, because a lot of people do want to force that or they want to get to that point, and it is possible that it can happen. But if your dog just flat out doesn't want to, then it is what it is.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. No, there's been some crazy scenarios I've been in for sure. I remember one time I was walking this puppy and there's this dude running around the neighborhood chasing his dog, and his dog's like charging me. And I just stop and I tell the puppy to sit, and I'm just watching, you know, because this puppy's not good to go to let go of the leash and to stay. But the dog's like circling me. The dude's like, oh, circling me, trying to catch his dog. Obviously playing like the dog's like not going to get got by the dude.
Dog's having a good time.
The dog's like rushing me, and then I'm like looking at it, and it's like running away from me. You know what I'm saying? So that just went on for like 5 minutes, and then it ran off somewhere else, and the guy's like running off. I was like, sorry. But also, I didn't tell you guys this. I think I was at Hampton Park with Rico recently, and a bunch of dogs around. People got their dogs off leash, Hampton Park, downtown Charleston, and all, you know, right next to the Citadel. And it's a Thursday. It's like around noon, you know, and I totally forgot to do parade practice there at noon. And so they do parade
Slammed.
practice, and all of a sudden, boom, cannons start going off. All the off leash dogs start hauling ass out of there. All of them. It was probably like 3 or 4 of them. And the people that own the dogs, these ladies, are screaming. They're starting to chase their dogs. There's like 20 people in this park area around these dogs, and they all start chasing the dogs. The cannons go off twice, and then they stop. And I was like, okay, good. I'm running over there with Rico. I'm like, let's try to help these people, you know?
Yeah.
And the dogs are just freaking out, running around. No one can get close enough
And
to
they got
them.
a bunch of strangers chasing
Right.
them too.
Yeah, exactly.
probably.
And they're starting to get close to like the edge of Hampton Park towards the like downtown Charleston. And so the cannons have stopped, and I was like, okay, these dogs will probably start calming down, which they did, and they started getting closer to the people. And this one lady almost had her dog. All of a sudden, boom, cannon goes off again.
God.
I was like, fuck. And the dogs literally took off into downtown.
Oh, no.
The ladies start hauling in, and they're all going different directions. But like each owner's like running after their dog. And there's nowhere as fast as their dog is, you know?
Yeah.
And then the 20 people are just like, they can't do anything, so they stop. They just go back to whatever they were doing. I was trying to run for a little bit with Rico, but the dogs were gone.
Yeah.
Like, I could not keep up with them. I was like, damn it, this sucks, you know?
Yeah.
And then they all just disappeared out of sight, and I was like, dang, you know? So environmental awareness, you know what I'm saying? Not letting your dog off leash unless you are 110%
Yeah.
sure that if something happens that you didn't expect, like the cannon going off, creating that loud vibrating noise, you know, that your dog will come back to you if that kind of stuff goes down. You know, damn, that was scary for the, I don't know what happened. I was hoping, I was like, those dogs could easily be hit by a car because they were going towards the heavy traffic of downtown, you know? So anyway, that was crazy. But yeah, I mean, I see crazy stuff happen all the time with people and their dogs, or I've seen people get drug over by their dogs walking on a leash. So I guess it all goes back to just good training for whatever you're expecting. So just teaching your dog to walk properly on a leash, getting him used to things that are going on. I mean, the cannon's going off. Like, you don't really expect that. You know what I'm saying? Unless you live down there and it's like a routine thing, then you can get used to it, you know?
Well, that's where things come in. Like we've done an episode on bulletproofing your recall.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like that would be a bulletproof recall right there. Literally cannon proof.
I mean, those cannons will shake
they're
everything.
freaking loud. They like, when they go off, car alarms are going off.
Yeah, they
I mean,
shake
it's insane.
everything.
That's crazy.
It's very loud.
I took Bane down there to a Citadel parade whenever I first moved back from San Diego, and the cannons went off, and he was like, what the hell? And he just put himself like real tight to me in heel position and sat right next to me, and I was like, all right. So
Yeah.
but anyway, so introducing two dogs properly, some other stories after that, but something to always be considering. Always have your dog's best interest in mind. Take it slow, right? Don't rush it. Like Kevin said, just because you want your dog to do a certain thing doesn't mean your dog is able to or wanting to do that certain thing. You can try to build it up the best you can, right? But in the end, just understand your dog, their personality, their preferences, all that kind of stuff, right? If you guys need dog training, reach out to us, Canine Revolution Dog Training. You can hit us up on any of the socials, or you can email us at info@caninerevolutiondogtraining.com. No matter where you're at, we'll try to help you out. If you guys want to support the podcast, go to Amazon, go to the link below, get you a Good to Go shirt, and you can be good to go. And don't forget, if you want to support America,
What you do?
if you want to support Americans doing things, Americans doing things,
Americans.
you can go to originusa.com. You can go to jockofuel.com. You can get jeans. You can get belts. You can get boots. You can get gis if you like to train jiu-jitsu, right? You can get supplements to help yourself that are good for you. Made in America by Americans. By Americans. And so with that being said, go to originusa.com. They have hunt gear now too. So if you like hunting,
Nice
it's
hunt
good
gear.
to go.
I
Yeah, for
bet.
sure. You can go to jockofuel.com, originusa.com, use code SINGER101, get 10% off, right? And then you'll be good to go, okay? But we appreciate you guys. Thanks for supporting the podcast. We're getting a lot of good feedback, so keep sending that to us. And until next time.